When I was in seminary, I was the pastor of the black church at Yale. Each weekend coming up to Sunday, a lot of my classmates would be hurrying off out of town to preach somewhere. One Friday, a bunch of us were sitting around at lunch and noticed how unusual it was for all of us to be in town that late in the week. Then one of them said, "Hey, Black Madonna, I'm coming to church to worship with y'all this Sunday. I want to hear what you've been putting down." The other said, "Yeah, we're coming to your church this Sunday." And I asked them, "Why y'all still in town?" They said, "Man, it's Easter. No pastor's going to give up their pulpit on Easter." And I asked why. And they said, "Because it's the easiest Sunday of the year to preach on. All you got to say is, 'He got up, didn't he get up?' And the whole congregation would shout and fall out in the aisle." Then old Big Scott Williamson stood up in his chair and he started preaching impromptu. "He got up, didn't he get up?" And they all shouted and fell out in the aisles and laughed. And when they stopped laughing, one of them asked me, "Black Madonna, what you gonna preach about?" I said, "I didn't have a title until right now. I'm preaching on, 'He got up, why can't you?'" Their whole preparation for Easter is how people prepare for Easter who are tied to the Easter story. It is a story we are taught as children, a story we receive in church at our parents' knees. This Easter story tells of how a messianic figure named Jesus preached the gospel of salvation until he was arrested, tried, and crucified. And 3 days later, when his female followers came to anoint his body for burial, they found an empty tomb. Later, his disciples began to have experiences where this same Jesus appeared to them. He spoke and ate with them to confirm that he had, in fact, been raised from the dead and had victory over death. So for people caught up by the Easter story, this Sunday is the annual commemoration of this specific historical event that took place in Israel 2,000 years ago. Now, commemorations by nature are memorials. They are about remembering. All European Christianity's religious observances are commemorations of past events. Christmas commemorates the day that Jesus was born. Good Friday commemorates the day that Jesus died. Easter commemorates the day he rose again. Pentecost commemorates the day the church was born. But what we need to understand today is that a religion primarily concerned with commemorations of past events is dead religion. Its churches are museums to what God did in the past that is dead and gone. Its hymns and murals and statues and paintings and stained glass windows testify to what God did in the past. Its Bible chronicles what God did in yesteryear. Its Sunday schools tell stories of what God did and said in antiquity. The Catholic Church goes even further with this by saying that Revelation is closed, meaning that after the days of the Bible, God is really no longer active in the world in the same way that God was in the past. So every Easter, people all over the world come together to celebrate a dead commemoration. with no expectation that God might do something for them right now. I saw an advertisement that said, "Come celebrate the resurrection of Jesus." And people were shouting and jumping up and down. And our beloved founder was watching it with me, and he saw people shouting and jumping up and down, and he asked the question, what difference is that going to make in their lives right now? You see, we need help right now. We live in a world in crisis, a world where humanity is faced with a number of tremendously dangerous problems at the same time. Conflicts around the world and tensions between world powers could any day spiral out of control and lead to World War III. The very deep and growing political and cultural differences in America has us witnessing a country slowly descending into madness as people speak in anticipation of civil war. The COVID pandemic, which everyone is anxious to put behind us, is still not over. Not only are people still getting sick and dying, but the psychological, economic, and social effects are still affecting our daily lives in profound but imperceptible ways. And then there's climate crisis that is increasingly raising the Earth's temperature to dangerous levels, creating unpredictable weather-related disasters, and is gradually making parts of the planet uninhabitable. Yes, we need help right now. After ignoring it for decades, the FBI has finally warned that white domestic terrorism is the #1 threat to peace and tranquility of the United States. And the former president threatens to rain down death and destruction on his own country if anyone has the audacity to try to hold him accountable for any of his many crimes. Now that he's been indicted, his followers are actually willing to tear up the whole country to protest. And finally, demographic changes are making the country darker, younger, and more progressive, have made many white Americans preferring to end democracy altogether rather than live in a country as a numerical minority. In a world like this, we need more than dead commemorations of yesterday's miracles. We need help right now. In the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church, we are African people, and we have an African interpretation of Christianity. We do not limit ourselves to simply commemorating past events. We do not believe that Revelation is closed and that God is somehow less involved in the world today than in the past. We believe that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. African religion is not focused on the past. It's focused on the here and now. It's concerned with receiving energy and power here and now. African prayers and rituals are not dead commemorations. They are purposeful invocations seeking the energy and power to address human need right now. If somebody is sick, if somebody is depressed, if somebody is afraid or lonely or homesick or hopeless or emotionally disturbed, or if there is strife and discord in the community, we believe that we can call upon the power of God to satisfy our needs right now. When we look at Easter from this point of view, it is a day of profound spiritual significance with implications far beyond the Easter story. Easter is about resurrection, not just the resurrection. Resurrection has to do with renewal, rebirth, recovery, transformation, resuscitation, rejuvenation, new beginnings, starting over, rising to new life, new hope, and new possibilities. In a more basic sense, you could say all religion is really about resurrection. Every prayer, every worship service, and every ritual is about resurrection, seeking new life, new hope, and new possibilities through the power of God. It doesn't make a difference what tradition it is, it's all the same. From the sunrise services on Easter morning to the night watch services on New Year's Eve. From the fasting of Ramadan to the prayers of Rosh Hashanah. From the divinations of Ifa to the sacred ceremonies of Vodun. From the spirit possession of Santeria to the awakening of the Kundalini energy within and yoga. It's all about resurrection, seeking new life, new hope, and new possibilities through the power of God. Religion is about resurrection. The true spiritual significance of Easter can be seen by the time of the year that it occurs. It occurs in the spring, or as astronomers would say, at the time of the vernal equinox, the time of the year when the sun is directly over the equator and the day is equal part light and dark. For thousands of years before Christianity, this time of year has been considered a time of sublime balance, when a portal of transformation is open that embraces the energy of rebirth, fertility, creativity, and expansive growth for mind, body, and spirit. Our ancient African ancestors believed that this is a time when we can intentionally tend to our inner souls and receive the visions we want to manifest in our lives, and we can plant seeds and watch them grow. In other words, this is not about remembering a past event. It is about the very real opportunity available to us to change our lives right now. The religion of African people has always been focused on this type of right now experience. Our ancient African ancestors created religion before the dawn of recorded history. And their creation of religion came from observing the natural world all around them. They lived in the midst of it all as a part of nature. They learned to build their lives around the cycles and rhythms and patterns of the natural world. One of their earliest revelations was that everything in nature went through a cyclical process of birth, life, death, and resurrection. They saw a resurrecting force at work all around them. The bright sun of daylight gradually dies into the darkness of night, only to rise again in the dawning of a new day. Trees appear to die in the fall, shedding their leaves only to rise again and bud and bloom anew in the spring. Crops wither and die at the end of the harvest, only to rise again and bear fruit in the next season. The moon disappears little by little each day, only to rise again full and bright every 29 and a half days. Flowers appear to die at the end of their season, only to rise again and reach for the sky in technicolor glory in the spring. Animals disappear and hibernate through the winter, only to rise again when the season changes. After 1,000,000 years of observing the cycles, patterns, and rhythms of nature, our ancestors determined that God was the unseen, super intelligent, resurrecting power behind the natural world that they could see. God is the power that raises up, that renews, that restores, that heals, that transforms, revives, and resurrects. In other words, they found that God is the resurrecting force in the world. Easter is a reminder that we can open our lives to our own resurrection possibilities right now, because the resurrecting power not only exists all around us, it exists within us too. Our scripture reads, God who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to you through God's Spirit that lives in you. This is why Jesus tells his disciples, we are all sons and daughters of God. He was saying that we are all expressions of God. In other words, we are human beings who derive our being from the source of being, who is God. Our best self-theology teaches that as expressions of the divine, we are endowed with a spark of divinity that gives us certain divine attributes. Our inner divinity gives us the dynamic potential to learn, grow, evolve, overcome, rise above, figure out, and master the circumstances of our lives. Our inner divinity comes with a unique combination of gifts, talents, interests, and passions. Our inner divinity comes with dreams and visions. It comes with a powerful inner drive to fulfill our divine destiny. And our inner divinity gives us resilience, determination, and grit. This power exists in all of us and makes it possible for us to find new life, new hope, and new possibilities through the power of God. But as long as we limit ourselves to focusing only on the Easter story and the resurrection of Jesus 2,000 years ago, we are missing out on the resurrection opportunities available to us right now. We need to believe this, understand this, and be open to it. We need to learn how to activate this power and cooperate with it, because we're going to need it. At some point, inevitably, we're going to face a major problem, or a challenge, or a hurdle, or obstacle, or threat. The loss of our health, the loss of our dreams, the loss of our love, the loss of our faith, or the loss of a loved one, the loss of our job, our title, our dignity, our self-respect, our reputation, or even our freedom. In times like these, when we are confronted by challenges, negative thoughts can take root in your mind and derail us and take us down. This is especially true for black people who live in a racist enemy system that has done everything possible to destroy us. We live in a toxic environment designed to undermine our sense of worth and value. From the time we're born, our minds are constantly and relentlessly under attack with negative beliefs and ideas. Negative thoughts can overpower you, causing your mind to tell you, you can't win. Your future is doomed. Your life is over. There's no way out of this mess. You've seen your best days. Oh, black people can't win. And you wasted your time with Negroes. These negative thoughts can bury you in a cemetery of despair. Psychologists say that depression kills more black people than anything else. Now, the death certificate doesn't say depression was the cause of death. But when you are in the cemetery of despair, negative thoughts and beliefs can cause you to do things that are self-destructive and self-sabotaging. When times like these occur, we need to remember that even though they may look like the same thing, there's a difference between burying and planting. They look like the same thing, but the difference is in your expectation of what comes next. You know, when I was little, my first pet was a dog named Frisky. She was a little Cocker Spaniel. And she grew up with me and my brothers like she was part of the family. I don't ever remember a time where Frisky wasn't around. And every morning she would jump into bed and lick our faces to wake us up for school. Then one day when I was about 10, I came home from school to the news that Frisky had died. It was devastating. It was our first experience with death. And we waited in shock for my father to come home from work. When he came home, he dug a hole in the backyard. And we had a whole funeral with testimonials and a eulogy. Matter of fact, that was my first message. And we buried Frisky. It was a burial. We knew it was the end. We didn't expect Frisky to rise again and come licking our faces to wake us up the next morning. As a matter of fact, if she had, we might still be running. What do you expect after a loss, a failure, a setback, or a catastrophe? Do you expect a burial, or do you expect a resurrection? It's up to you, but what you expect is likely what you're going to get. When you bury something, you don't expect anything. You're saying it's over. This is the end. But when you put a seed in the ground, you don't say, I'm burying this seed. You say, I'm planting this seed. The difference is in your expectation. You expect to see it rise again. When challenges arise, it's your inner attitude that determines whether it's a burial or planting. When we believe that we have been buried, we cut off our access to all those divine inner resources that God put in us. We cut off our access to those divine inner resources we've been given, to that resurrection power that exists in our God seed within. If you believe you are buried, you will go down and you'll stay down. But if you believe that this temporary setback is a planting, you can still rise. You can use the power within to rise, to grow, to overcome, to blossom, to thrive, to flourish like never before. You see, adversity is not supposed to bury us or give us an excuse to be pitiful. Adversity is not supposed to break us. It's actually supposed to make us by activating the resurrecting power within. Jesus said in John 12:24, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and is planted, it will not produce fruit. If you go to a gardening store, you can see seeds sitting on the shelf. You can store seeds on a shelf for a lifetime. They will never become what they were intended to be until you put the seed in the ground. Its potential will never be realized until it is planted. As long as it's on the shelf comfortable, its potential lies dormant. The same thing is true of you and me. If we can stay on the shelf comfortable, complacent, and in our comfort zone, if you don't have to stretch, strain, struggle, and grow, if you don't have to deal with adversity, your potential will remain locked up on the inside, dormant. It's only after the seed is planted does it go through the process of germination. Germination means to grow. And it occurs when the power that God put in the seed takes over. You know, the farmer tills the soil the farmer plants the seed, but what happens next is not what the farmer does, it's what God does. Something inside the seed is activated. Something that has been there all along. Underground, in the dark, in the dirt, something begins to happen. The earth has a chemical reaction with the seed that activates growth. The seed breaks out of its shell and develops roots that stretch out seeking nourishment. Then the roots break through the ground and grows leaves that begins to harvest energy from the sun. The seed has risen again. You know, no matter what happens to you in life, we need to remember that we're seeds too. We are God's seeds. And whenever we feel buried, we have to remind ourselves that we are just planted if we are not dead. And just like the seed has something inside that has been there all along, you do too. You are an expression of God endowed with an inner divinity that gives you life and power. The same challenges that are vexing your soul today can be preparing you for the next level tomorrow. If you could just hang in there and keep a positive attitude, a germination process has begun and God is doing something in you. And just like the little seed has to keep pushing through the dirt until it breaks out of the ground to harvest sunlight, we have to keep pushing through the darkness and difficulty until we find the light. You don't have to be buried in the cemetery of despair. But you have to intentionally decide, I'm not giving up. I will not sabotage my life by living in negativity. I will not dwell on my disappointments. I will not let self-pity hinder my growth. I will not let feelings of unworthiness limit my life. I will rise again. The only thing between you and your resurrection is your mind. You can reach new levels. You can break new ground. You can rise higher and do better. All because you have God in you and that inner divinity has given you the potential to rise again and again and again and again. What's true for us as individuals is also true for black people as a group. Throughout our 403-year experience of slavery and oppression, we've been down. We've been plenty down. But we've never felt that we were buried. Even though everything possible has been done to bury us. They tried to bury us with 250 years of slavery. They tried to bury us by erasing our memory, our history, our language, our culture, our religion, and everything that makes us human. They tried to bury us by declaring us biologically inferior. They tried to bury us with inhumane violence and 100 years of lynching. They tried to bury us with Jim Crow apartheid, institutional racism, mass incarceration, bad schools, voter suppression, and state-sanctioned police murders of unarmed black people. Early in the pandemic, when they believed that it was disproportionately affecting people of color, they tried to bury us with COVID by refusing for a long time to do anything about it. Most recently, they've been trying to bury us by silencing the past, silencing our voices, and making it a jailable offense to tell the truth about history. There was always something deep inside that told us even in the darkest of days, even in the worst of times, that we are not buried, just planted, and that we will rise again. We should take a lesson from our ancestors. The author Ta-Nehisi Coates says that back during the time of the Revolutionary War, a black person could look 100 years backward and see nothing but slavery, and look 100 years forward and see nothing but slavery. So really, what did they have to live for? They could have packed it in, shut it down, given it up and ended it all. But after every setback, every hardship, every crisis, every injustice, every abuse, every heartbreak, every disappointment, and every loss, they found the faith and strength to rise again. We are here today because our ancestors took advantage of the resurrection opportunities available to them to rise again. And today, me and you are called upon to do the same thing. You know, when I was a young preacher, I died in the pulpit quite a few times. My mentor and our beloved founder told me, God has given you everything that you need to be a good preacher. But the only way to rise above your mental limitations is to keep on getting up. So I got up 3 times. I was preaching 3 times a week for 20 years. That's what we have to do today. We have to keep on getting up. No matter what or who tries to keep us down, we have to keep on getting up. What I'm trying to say this big, bright, beautiful, glorious Easter morning is resurrection is not a one-time event that happened in Israel 2,000 years ago. We are not gathered here just in commemoration of a past event. We are looking for some resurrection right now. Resurrection is how God works in the world. God resurrects dead hopes, resurrects dead dreams, resurrects dead relationships, resurrects dead possibilities, resurrects dead opportunities. God is the God of resurrection. And God offers you, me, and black people collectively the chance to rise again. So get up, get up, get up, and keep getting up. No matter what you've been through, no matter what you've done, no matter what has been done to you, no matter what anybody says or thinks about you, you can rise again. So get up, and keep on getting up. Amen and Ashe.